Blind people of Reddit, what texture is your favorite or one that you would describe as beautiful? A little off topic, but a long time ago, I helped construct a textural sensory garden for profoundly disabled kids. Most were blind, many were also deaf. All had mobility and cognitive impairments. The place was a hospice for kids that couldn't survive at all without constant medical attention, and wouldn't survive long even with it. It was hard to tell if they understood that they were specifically being introduced to new experiences, that the intention was to bring them a little happiness or satisfaction. But they embraced the experiences and it appeared to do them some good emotionally, at the very least. It brought some comfort to their families who were also in need of support and care, to see their child, grandchild or sibling engage with the world and perhaps enjoy and explore it in some small capacity. The kids all seemed to love rougher textures, the items with more nuance and complexity to them, like tree barks, ferns and gravels. I guess there's more to explore with these textures. They are just intrinsically more interesting, but they all responded to most natural stimulus that we perhaps take for granted, like rain falling on their faces, warm sunlight, a breeze ruffling their hair. Cool, dry sand also seemed to be popular. I find that cathartic also. I think that's just human nature to find burying your hands or feet in cool sand relaxing somehow. And most of them, when a therapy dog was brought in, would happily brush, hold, or just touch the dog's fur indefinitely. This was awesome to read. I have a young cousin that's blind, and she absolutely loves the texture of animals, specifically long-haired cats. She says they're kind of like real-life pillows. God, she's cute. A close friend of mine growing up was blind and said that she thought that her seeing eye dog's fur was the best feeling ever because she could touch it whenever she wanted and it reminded her that she always has a friend. When her dog eventually died, she posted something about it on Facebook, saying that she, the dog, played more than worked and loved more than that. So sweet. I didn't come here to cry. It might seem dumb, but coins. I like having a whole bunch of different coins in my pocket and feeling the difference in size, shape, thickness, texture, etc. It's really satisfying to sort them all from biggest to smallest in denominations and actually figure out how much I have, even if I can't tell by looking. The 5p hidden between two 20ps is always a tricky bastard, and 10s and 2s are irritatingly similar at best. It seems like someone designed a bunch of coins with blind people in mind, and then said frick it and put in a duplicate just to screw with them. American coins are all different sizes, except for the diamond penny, which are quite similar. Not blind, but rather close due to optic nerve defects. My least favorite texture is microfiber anything, mostly because calluses on my fingertips catch the minute fabric and it feels like I'm the hooks in Velcro. My favorite is the sensation of peeling adhesive. That feeling when something sticky is suctioned to your finger and slowly getting pulled away is grand. Oh god, you just reminded me that I freaking hate microfiber. I feel like I have old farmer hands and need lotion. My parents are blind. My mum likes crystals, big chunks of amethyst and such. She likes malachite too because it's so cold and smooth in its tumbled form. My dad has a tiny tin ingot that he loves, and a lead cannonball. Edit. The cannonball is tiny, like marble sized. It's kept in a cabinet and only brought out once a year or so, but thanks for your concern. My great grandma was blind and would always run her fingers along the books written in braille, bumps on the page so blind people can read. And I asked her what she was reading and she told me she was reading Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. About a few months before she passed away, she told me that she had no idea how to read braille, but liked the bumps on the books and made up her own stories as she ran her finger through the bumps. Miss you grams. The plastic glue they use to stick cards to paper so it doesn't rip. It's stick but not too sticky. I love the gooiness to it. I also love the weird kind of furry like plastic that Apple uses on their gift cards. I love that goo. I like getting credit card offers just cause I get some of that goo to play with for a while. Not blind myself, but a friend of mine is. He wears a manually wound mechanical watch and says he loves the feeling of winding it, feeling the resistance of the gears and springs. He obviously can't use a watch, but says he likes listening to it tick and just the idea of wearing one. I hope this gets visibility, because it was such an eye-opening experience for me as a teenager. Back when I was in high school, in the marching band, we had a lost blind freshman student walk in. Rather, he stood at the doorway listening. Our band teacher welcomed him in to listen while someone came to get him. This part isn't about textures, but it was the first time he was that close to live instruments. He asked for us to stop, because he wanted to identify the sound he liked best. We went through every instrument until we found it, the handheld cymbals. We handed him a pair. He kept them on his lap, running his fingertips, fingers, and hands on it. After he was done feeling it, he asked how to make the sound. So we did. Our lead percussionist led him through it. It was his favorite thing ever. Fast forward to 2 years later after that incident, and he's a veteran member of our marching band, pep bands, concert band, wind ensemble, and jazz band. He even participated with us at the Home Depot Center for the Battle of the High School Marching Bands put together by VH1. He was a great person and said percussion instruments filled the void for him. He would sometimes just stop and cry of happiness the first few weeks of playing with us. That's awesome. I for one love music and am jealous of those who can appreciate it more than me. One of the volunteers at Boy Scout camp was my buddy's dad, who was completely blind, had an illness where he had intense pressure on the optic nerve. It was painful and made him incredibly sick to his stomach. He fought through blurred vision and debilitating headaches pain 4 weeks before the doctors offered him the heartbreaking treatment. They did something, I assume cut the optic nerve. No more pain. But he had to deal with blindness for the rest of his life. He was teaching us basic woodworking. The crappy pine he gave us to work with was so smooth. He spent a great deal of time sanding it to get it that way. He really appreciated the feel of good smooth wood he could work with. My buddy also said that he fricked his girlfriend loudly a lot. Kind of weird for us preteens to take in and comprehend. But I imagine he liked the feel of feminine skin of all shapes and sizes as well. Thought you meant your buddy fricked his girlfriend loudly a lot. Not that his father was loud in bed. I'm sitting here thinking, what a dong. His father is blind, not deaf. Not blind myself. I have an older relative who has very bad eyesight, and his wardrobe consists almost exclusively of ratty old denim and ratty old denim because he really likes the way they feel. My aunt was blind, passed away when I was 5, and when I was around 3-4. She and I would play a game where I would give her a toy figure or stuffed animal and she would guess what it was. She was very interesting to my 3-year-old self. Anyway, this is an interesting discussion. I would like to thank you, OP. Usually any question I see about blind people is some iteration of, what do you see while dreaming? Tripping on hallucinogens, that kind of thing. This is something that I as a seeing person would never had thought of as a preference of a blind person. I suppose it's akin to a seeing person's preference for a certain color in an abstract way. Thank you for surprising an older editor. I volunteered at a summer camp when I was a young teen, and one of the counselors for the children between the ages of 6 and 10 was a blind man, and I admired the heck out of him. He had such a unique way of teaching the kids different lessons. One of the more clever lessons he taught was about teamwork, and he would have groups of about 5 or 6 children compete against other groups to make the most creative sculpture out of clay, and he would tell them at the beginning that he would be judging and selecting the best looking sculpture at the end. Obviously the implication was that he would be feeling them to see which one was the best, but at the end of the event he would pick the winners solely by listening to how they worked together while making their sculpture. He would explain to them that what made their sculpture the best was that they worked together as a team to create something, and that's what made it the winning sculpture. He would also help prepare lunches by filling pitchers with water and juice, which he accomplished by wearing gloves and holding the pitcher by the lip while he was filling it. When he felt the cold liquid hit his fingers, he knew the pitcher was full and would move on to the next. I told all of that because I thought his ability to be a valuable counselor without sight was amazing. But more in the spirit of this post, he once told me that he appreciates the feeling of temperatures more than textures. He specifically mentioned the cold marble surrounding the fountain at the camp because he said that he was so used to feeling things specifically as a way to figure out what they were that it was more tedious than enjoyable. But that an out of place temperature, like something surprisingly cool on a hot summer day, would snap him out of that, and he would find himself appreciating that experience more. TL. Dr. Blind camp counselor said that he appreciated temperature more than texture, specifically when it was an unexpected temperature like a cool stone surface on a hot summer day, or a warm mug on a cold morning. Not that different from those of us with sight, I would imagine, but I like the way he explained it. One of my friends is blind, and he loves the feel of suede. He wears a suede jacket, and will often just stroke it a little when he sits idle. I know a blind couple who got married recently. I asked them once, "What attracts you physically the most?" She said, she likes the spot right behind his earlobes, how smooth it feels to touch. This will probably be buried as I'm late to the party. I heard something interesting recently, and it's on the topic of sensory input. Since blind people can't see where their physical body meets the rest of the world, when they hold tightly onto a physical object, their malleable conception of my body is extended swiftly to enclose the object they are holding. For example, when they hold a stick, without the preconception of my skin is the finish line to the world, the stick becomes a seamless extension of their body. Thank you for sharing. That is fascinating. I work with a blind deaf. Among other things, kiddo, and two of his favorite textures are corduroy and hard plastic to scrape his nails against. When I had the chance to study piano for a short time, one of the students of the teacher was blind. I got early for my class one day and he'd make both of us tell the notes he played by ear. She got all of them right. She was a bit anxious. She moved her hands a lot, but she was so tranquil whenever she was in front of a piano and feeling the keys. An amazing player in person. She must be around 13 now. The amount of idiots in this thread saying blind people don't use Reddit is unbelievable. A guy that lost his vision after his dad shot him started an AMA based off an AskReddit thread just last week. The sighted world usually knows nothing about screen readers or other devices used online. I only learned about them when I was a web designer and we designed usable sites, so any device or user could use the web to make stupid jokes. I'm not officially blind, but I have serious medical problems and have been blind for 3 out of the past 4 months, so I'm going to say I'm qualified. I'm very texture oriented. I love those soft, minky blankets, like what a lot of baby blankets are made of. I could lay there all day and just rub that minky goodness. If you have ever made naan, then you would know how pillowy soft the dough is after it rises and you add more flour. I love to poke it before I start dividing and rolling it out. Such a blissful feeling. If I could have naan dough as a pillow, I would be the happiest little girl. The thing most people might not realize is how important texture is when you can't see. Textures have the ability to throw me right back into a wonderful memory and are actually a very important aspect of a lot of my experiences. The first time I went out with a girl and things got hot and heavy, I remember how soft and smooth her hair felt. I think that's influenced what I find attractive, as I have since been with other women who have crustier hair textures that are curly and I just don't find that as attractive. Mousse has to be one of my favorite desserts, as its soft airy texture is wonderful when you bite into it. I will often ask for mousse when my birthday comes around just because out how unique it feels. Hot sand on my feet is another sensation that is wonderful. Sometimes you can even feel individual grains of sand on the beach that almost feel like the spell out that there should have been a serious tag. Obviously not everyone can feel this when walking along a beach, but it's one of those things I'll never forget. Finally, I know some people may disagree, but I'd much prefer microfiber sheets to any other texture. They feel so cool and so soft. I definitely recommend them. Spelling mousse as mousse gives it a whole new meaning. I would have to say marble. Fun fact, when I was about 7 my siblings used to tell me that marble was cheese. So I went a full 2 years or so thinking that our floors were made of cheese. Both my parents were blind. My father passed a few years ago. My mother took up stone carving a few years back after doing decades of pottery. She loves the feeling of the rough uncarved stone as well as the completed polished sculpture. She also loves the feeling of plants and grass. My father always seemed to like the feeling of the dining room tablecloths and the patterns that were sewn into them. I always noticed him tracing his fingers along the patterns when we were eating dinner. I think if he was still around, he would have said that the texture of any power tool in the basement was a beautiful thing. A little off on a tangent, but I met an elderly blind woman a few years back who loved to play a game where she would guess the color of your shirt by feeling the fabric. She said she could feel the way different colored dyes affected the cotton, and was about 95% accurate. I've just always wondered if, in the absence of sight, there is a texture or sound that gives an equivalent sense of joy. Equivalent to what? But for me, I love my dog. As far as sound, maybe just the sound of water. For me, it's a lot more complex than that. My grandfather was blind. I can't ask him his favorite texture, because he died a few years ago. I can tell you he never greeted a grandchild without touching their hair, for longer than normal. My cousins and I would joke about it. He could also identify us by our hair texture, not the length, just the feel of it. My grandmother was blind almost her whole life. She really loved to feel things like silks and velvet materials. She really loves things like fuzzy cotton blankets. She has one nearby. My dad, who's blind, you can check out my submitted stuff. I did an AMA a while ago, says he loves petting our dog, a Shih Tzu who has very soft fur. He also says he likes the feeling of glass cleaning cloth because it's so smooth. I bought some high-end playing cards. Not really, just not those cheap butt cards, and the texture felt so good that I don't play with them. I just leave in the box and take one off to touch, sometimes. Any blind people like those too? I'd say really nice striations of meat. Gnashing on muscle that just breaks down really nice is one life's finest pleasures. When I was in high school I took part in an immersion class for ASL. We had to go a full week with wax stuffed in our ears to try to understand what the world was like living deaf. For extra credit, the following week we also went a week blindfolded to understand what it was like to be blind. I found my favorite textures to be painted cinder block, like the texture of my school walls, a sprig of an evergreen tree, like the pine in my dad's backyard, and hammered gold. Don't know why the hammered gold, I just really liked the texture. Is it weird for me to say cacti? I love running my fingers over various cacti, obviously avoiding injury or pain. My wife thinks I'm crazy and she has to scold me like a child at greenhouses or atriums because sometimes I end up with spines in my fingers and I whine about it. I get it, the bot AskReddit thread was kinda amusing. Must we turn each thread to a pile of crap answers just because OP did not put a serious tag? The blind people can't Reddit joke is too easy. You can still be funny without being childish here on Reddit. My friend is blind, hey Kate, and she likes tracing her fingers across people's faces. She says it's better than looking. My mom was blind and loved the feeling of my dad's lambskin leather jacket. She also loved cats. We lived in the country and there were feral cats that she became friends with. She spent most of her day outside petting and feeding them. She even caught a couple kittens that we still have today. I just made a Reddit account for this. I am someone suffering. I use that term loosely as I don't feel sorry for myself and I feel good. Also pretty drunk right now. RP. Which is retinitis pigmentosa. That's short for you're going blind gradually over the years. So buckle up Buster, it's going to get tough. For me, so far, the feeling of skin is my favorite. It's vibrant, alive, and warm. The feeling of someone in your arm, and the life you feel from it, undesirable. As for sounds, someone breathing. Not the whole dirty sucker breathing down a phone, but going to sleep with someone and hearing them breathe. Feeling it on your chest while you lie there. Well, that and Led Zeppelin 4. Thank you. I'm not blind, but a spurg with really bad eyes. I happen to enjoy soft fabrics like soft knits and fleece. I despise nylon and wool. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.